Hi, I'm Michael Lahoud, half man, half amazing, and you're listening to the Austin Anthem podcast.
We are delighted at the Austin Anthem to bring you this extra special podcast. One of our own, Matt Barbour, had the opportunity to visit with Michael Lahoud, who, as listeners to the show will know, is going to be sitting shoulder to shoulder with Adrian Healy, covering Austin FC in all of their home matches this season. We're delighted to have that pairing covering our club, and particularly delighted to go one-on-one with Michael and learn a bit more about his love of football, his career as a professional footballer, and his excitement in his new role here in Austin.
All right. I am really excited to introduce our guest today on the Austin Anthem podcast. He is a former NCAA champion with Wake Forest. He spent over a decade as a professional soccer player. He was a former top 10 MLS Super Draft pick. He played for Chivas USA and Philadelphia Union and MLS. He was capped internationally 4 times by Sierra Leone and ended his playing career just down the road with San Antonio FC. He's now moved into broadcasting and has been covering college soccer for the Longhorn Network and the ACC Network. And starting this season, he will be paired with Adrian Healy as Austin FC's lead broadcast analyst. It is a special honor to introduce today's guest, Michael Lahoud. Thanks for being on, Michael.
Thanks for having me. And gosh, every time I hear this podcast or hear you introduce someone, I always get the old Wu-Tang hype man music. Come on, the METHOD, man.
Oh my gosh, we're gonna have to put that in. So that's for sure next round of intro music for us.
I'd love that.
So and I want you to answer this question, how, like, your natural response, like not necessarily the correct answer. So where are you from originally? Like what do you consider to be your hometown?
Well, I'm originally from the original West Coast, Sierra Leone, to be exact, Freetown, Sierra Leone, that is, and couldn't be prouder to be representing Africa. And gosh, my story has taken me from the middle of the world to Washington, D.C., to both coasts here in the United States, and finally has brought me here to Central Texas, doing the thing that I love, which is calling the beautiful game.
So where did you do most of your growing up?
I grew up in Washington, D.C., so my story starts in Freetown, Sierra Leone, and I had to leave there when I was 6 years old because there was a civil war going on, and no child should ever witness some of the atrocities that were going around at the time due to blood diamonds, due to a lot of the civil unrest going on between the government and the people. But I was very fortunate to get an emergency visa and brought me to Washington, D.C., and gosh, it was probably the coolest place I could have landed or grown up in because it was such an eclectic place. There were people who looked like me, who went through similar struggles of being a refugee that I could relate to. And of course, the beautiful game, which is soccer, was just developing and coming to fruition in the DC area. So I will forever be grateful to call Washington, D.C. home and Washington, D.C. a part of my story.
So do you have like any specific memories of when you were in Sierra Leone, or were you too young?
Gosh, I was too young, to be honest. There are certain things as I get older, there's certain memories that remain and more of them fade away. One thing I remember was Sierra Leone. It was this majestic place. I just remember there was just a sense of happiness, a sense of peace. People, especially in my family, we were proud to be Sierra Leoneans. It wasn't what tribe are you a part of? It wasn't so much what's the color of your skin, what's your affiliation religiously. It was, are you Sierra Leonean? And we were united under that banner. And gosh, I remember that I grew up in a village just outside the capital, which was Freetown. And we were kind of country folks. When I look back. It was during the day, we were city people because you had to go into the city to do business. And that's where the hustle and bustle. So I always had this sense of gravitating towards a city. But at night, where I always felt life at peace and at rest was in the country. And the sound of water has always been just near and dear to my heart. We lived next to a majestic waterfall. And every night when I'd go to bed and every morning when I'd wake up, I'd hear the sound of water, rushing water outside my window. And it's something that stays with me today.
I think the country aspect, a lot of us that were born and raised in Texas can really relate to, because even, I grew up in Dallas, but I spent a lot of time with different family that had, that either lived in small towns or that, had some sort of, farmland or something out in the country. So that aspect, I think, is something that you can totally relate to no matter where you grew up, is, that peaceful feeling of, being out of the hustle and bustle of the city and all that. So that's kind of cool to hear.
Yeah, I've always gravitated towards nature and the mountains. Sierra Leone comes from Portuguese, which is the mountain lion. And so where I grew up, you had the beach, you had the coastal waters, you had the ocean, but within a couple miles going inland, you had the mountains, you had the hill country. It was the rugged terrain. And there's something about that. There was this wildness to the terrain that I just loved. And when I moved to Washington, D.C., as you can imagine, it's polar opposite. It's flat. It's, you go in and it's a bit Piedmont country, but just the wild, rugged terrain. There's nothing like it, man.
Well, you mentioned hill country. You've definitely come to the right place. I would imagine there's some similarity for sure.
Yeah, oh yeah. That the first time I ever saw the hill country, I felt this sense of home. I felt this place of resonance come up within me. And every time I drive through Austin, when you just get over the bridge there when you're on 35, which I know very well by now, going back and forth between San Antonio and Austin. But as soon as you get in, you can get lost in the downtown hustle and bustle. But where I get lost and is really in the majestic hill country. When the sun comes up, it just kisses the shadows that the hills make, and it's so serene. It's beautiful.
That's I really appreciate that, because that's a lot of what I appreciate about Austin also. So kind of switching to a soccer perspective, were you the kind of athlete that like really gravitated towards certain clubs when you were a kid growing up, or did you follow more individual players?
Well, before 1998, that question was simple. I just loved the game and I would have followed anyone. But one fateful day, I walked into the house and ESPN, when they had the Champions League, and Tommy and Derek Ray, Tommy Smith and Derek Ray are on. And
right.
And my mom's an avid soccer fan. And I come in and this team from Manchester is on, the red half of Manchester United. And I remember seeing him, and the way that the announcers and commentators were talking about him was the underdogs. They were playing Barcelona. And I thought, oh man, this team from Manchester is so bad. Like, they have this Beckham guy that they keep talking about. And I knew nothing. They were talking about them like David versus Goliath, that they were David, and they were going up against the mighty, mighty Barcelona. Little did I know that they were like the New York Yankees of the Premier League. But that one day coming after school, it was 1999 at this point, I'd watched a couple of their games, in the Champions League, and I watched them come back and overturn the Champions League semifinal tie against Juventus in Turin, and Dwight York and Andy Cole. Just seeing how they played, Beckham and just that class of '92, that spine of that team, Roy Keane putting the team on his back. And I'll never forget that day. I said, I'm a Manchester United fan. They're the underdogs of the world. No one's rooting for them. I'm going to be the one person. Yeah, I'm going to be the one person in America who's going to root for this team that no one knows about. Huh. Little did I know. And it was the perfect time. Yeah.
It's hilarious that of all teams, Manchester United was the underdog. I'll totally forgive you for being a Manchester United fan.
What team do you support?
So my EPO team is Blackburn Rovers, and they're not in the Premier League anymore. But when I started following the Premier League, Brad Friedel was like the only American that was playing abroad that was any good. And I liked the fact that they were a smaller club and they weren't, a Man U or an Arsenal, or Chelsea or any other big names. And frankly, I loved their crest and their uniforms. So it for a number of reasons that they ended up, being my club, and they still are now, even though they haven't been in the Premier League for a number of years at this point.
Well, I have a Blackburn Rovers story. When I was 15, I had the opportunity to go play abroad in a tournament in the UK, and our first game was against Blackburn Rovers. And I mean, just incredible youth setup. Probably the worst loss I've ever taken in my life.
Gosh, really?
Oh, they hammered us, and we were 15. We were playing against an under 12 team, and I mean, they hammered us. It was embarrassing how much better they were than we were, and I'll never forget playing against them, and then a couple of years later, seeing some of their players go to top Premier League clubs. There was one guy, his name was I think Abubakar Sanogo. He ended up going to Werder Bremen. Mm-hmm. But gosh, 4 years later, he was 16 when he got there. And I thought, this is incredible. Like, what an honor it was to be the whipping boys, to propel your career. Thanks. Jeez. But always have a lot of respect for Blackburn's Rovers Youth Academy firsthand.
God, I really, really wish I could say I set that up on purpose, but that was actually totally random that you had a great Blackburn Rovers story like that. But that may actually, I don't know if that's the answer to what my next question wanted to be, but I think it's a good setup for, like, was there a time or a moment when you realized you were good enough to play professionally?
There was. It was when I was in college. We had just won the national championship in 2007, and we ended up doing this tour of, and everyone seemed to want to play us. And our coach, Jay Vidovic, he grew up in Brazil. And so we did this tour of Brazil, and we played Santos, which they produced Pelé, Robinho, Neymar Jr., a small guy named Neymar Jr. that we now know.
A few guys people might have heard of.
Yeah. They're known for producing raw talent. And we went and played them, and they put on a clinic against us. I think it was maybe 5-0 at half. Not us, them. And I'll never forget, we scored one goal, and it was late in the game, and one of their guys gives up a goal, and immediately their coach pulls him off the field. The ref blows the whistle. And our coach goes over to his bench, and I just happened to be walking off the field, and just something said, why don't you walk over there and listen? And their coach said, this kid will probably never play for us again, and his career is over. And our coach said, what's going to happen to him? And he said, most likely he will go back home, and it's not, the future doesn't look bright for him. Most likely the odds are he's going to be a drug dealer, or fall into poverty. He is his family's only hope. And yet there's so many stories like him that we can't afford to just give a free handout. And I don't know what it was about that. I think really it was, for me personally, it was the game means so much more. The fact that this means more. What happened within 90 minutes transcends the individual. It's you're as a player, you are playing for your family, you're playing for your country, you're playing for so many people who sacrifice so much to get you to where you are. And that just resonated with me so much because of my own story, I think, of coming from Sierra Leone and the people that went before me and got me to where I got. It was almost a sense of honor your talent. And I think twofold, I got to go to a game and watch Corinthians play. And Ronaldo, the fat man, who because he blew up. No, but he's one of my favorite players of all time. He's a genius. But Ronaldo had just come back from Europe, and he looked like I think he just came back from Milan. He looked like he snuck the whole tray of Nutella with him. He was big. And I say that as respectfully as I can. He was big, but he could still do it. And it was watching him play and watching the Corinthians fans, how rabid they were for their club. And I remember getting off the bus, and this guy came up to me, this group of fans, they came up to me, and they surrounded me, they cornered me coming off the bus, and they started screaming Abuda. And I was like, a what? And they were like, Abuda, Abuda, Abuda. And my coach came and started speaking Portuguese to him, and he starts laughing, and they start doing this chant. And he said, they think that you look just like one of the legendary players from Corinthians, this guy named Abuda. And they were like bowing down, and I'd never seen anything like it, to be dignified and glorified in that way because of your contribution to a club. And it was the marriage of those two experiences on the same trip that I came back to college to finish out my time at Wake Forest. And I said, this is what I want. I want to do this, and I will do whatever it takes, put in the extra work to get to the next level.
I mean, that's an incredible story, I mean, not just the experience, but just being able to pinpoint like that, when you really felt like you knew you wanted to make it happen. Not like, you realized, oh, I'm good enough and I'm so talented, I'm going to make it, but no, that you're going to go out and make it happen. So you talked about like playing for, your family and, playing for, any of the people that would be rooting for you. Is that something you kind of always carried, with you throughout your career, anytime you were going to step onto a field?
Absolutely. Soccer was my way forward. Soccer was always my way out. Soccer was my first love, really. It was my best friend. When I came to the States, I came with a lot of trauma, and the trauma of the Civil War. I felt disoriented. I was embarrassed about not being able to speak English. I felt different because I was a refugee. There's things as a kid when you move to a new country, or even a new neighborhood. It didn't even have to be that drastic, or a new city. You just want to fit in. The question of who am I is the number one question every young child is asking. And soccer gave me everything. And it gave me friends. It gave me meaning. It gave me values. And so when the opportunity came, and I'll never forget when I was in college, there was this buzz about teams being interested at the next level. When we won the national championship, really, there was nothing like it. It was this feeling of something's happening here. I think this thing that I dreamt of as a little kid, I think it's going to happen. And when you're pursuing a dream, there's a cost to it. You have to make sacrifices. And when I look back, I was making those sacrifices ever since I was a little boy, ever since I was probably 10 or 11 years old. I was spending my summers differently. While most of my friends were out on vacation with their families, I was training or at soccer camp or playing soccer tournaments. when I was in college, while a lot of my teammates were going home in the summers, I was at school putting in the extra work, working on my fitness, working on weights, physical capacity, watching games, and I played for the best coach and mentor and really father figure that I could have had at that time, in Jay Vidovich, who he invested in me, and I'll never forget that when I graduated Wake Forest and I was leaving to go get drafted in the super draft, we were at dinner and he said, during your time here at Wake Forest, you never asked me the most important question. And I said, well, what is that? He said, you never asked me why. Why did I choose to invest in you? And I thought, man, this guy is like Gandalf from Lord of the Rings. He just always knows what to ask. And he was. And he said, because you were always my diamond in the rough. Because I just knew that if you, like a diamond, if you just were in the right environment and you were nurtured and compressed a little bit at a time, that you would turn in to a rock solid diamond. And I thought, man, what a perfect analogy to send me off on my way to do what I love most.
Well, and what a kind of a gift that must have been to have someone believe in you like that, because I don't know that everybody gets that, whether it's, sports or, normal school, normal 9-to-5 job, whatever it is, having a leader that sees your potential and helps you realize it is a pretty special thing.
It meant everything to me. It still does till this day as I pursue this next chapter of broadcasting and media. I still keep in touch with Coach Jay. It took a while for me to even call him Jay. I still call him Coach, but he's a special man, and he taught me to be more than an athlete. He used to have this adage of winning on and off the field, and he said, I can live with wins and losses on the field, but if the worst thing that I do during your time here at Wake Forest is mentor you and grow you into a better man, because then I will have won. And looking back on it, I was just like, man, that's the stuff that's got that gold dust to it. That's the stuff that life is made of, the incredible journey of life.
Absolutely. So you mentioned the super draft, and I guess I'm just kind of curious, what that process was like as a way to come into the league. Like, you're not getting to choose where you sign. It's different from how most players go to their club in the soccer world. So what was your impression of it?
One of my best gifts at that time was my obliviousness to the process. I focus on one thing, and I'm all in, and I tune everything else out. And I'm so grateful, because I had no clue what was going on with the super draft or anything. My life changed in the course of a month forever. I remember being at the Final Four. It was in Dallas. So as fate would have it, I was always going to move to Texas. It was in Dallas. And we just lost to Carolina, and it was heartbreaking. We were pursuing back-to-back NCAA championships. And we believed that we were the best team in the country, and we fell short. I remember sitting in Dallas and thinking, where do I go now? Like, man, I guess I'm going to graduate and don't really know what's next. And really thinking about soccer, but kind of thinking, I'm kind of lost. Like, no one's telling me anything. I know people are interested in this professional soccer thing, but I don't know what's going on. And I remember going back home to the DC area and to Virginia and checking my email, my Wake Forest email, and it's just one email after another. And this email from MLS comes. I'm like, Major League Soccer. I think I know who they are. I think I watch them every week. And it was this, it says, you've been formally invited to participate in the MLS Combine. I'm like, oh, that's cool. shut my laptop, go catch up with friends, like so oblivious. It doesn't really hit me because I'm still mourning the loss of the Final Four. And
Right.
my childhood best friend, Jack Wolf, I remember he called me and he had been reading up on ESPN, and they sent out a formal list of combine draft or invitees, and my name was on there. And he called me up and he goes, "Dude, do you know the combine is like in a month? What are you gonna do for it?" And I was like, "I don't know, just show up." And he goes, "No." So he goes, "We're gonna train." And I said, "Nah, I need some time. I'm already fit." And he goes, "No, no, no." He goes, "I'm going to tell you something that you may not realize." He goes, "You're the only person that's got a shot to live out a dream that we all had as kids. Because you don't realize this, but we've all been living vicariously through you." He goes, "When you win, we win." He goes, "This is bigger than you, man. So for us, you've got to put in this work." And I kid you not, my best friends that I grew up with, they trained me for a month. They would run trails with me. They would put drills. We train every day for an entire month. And I went into the combine inspired because of them and because of that reminder of I'm playing for something bigger than myself. And when I got there, I played some of the best soccer. And I remember that feeling you have when you know that you're balling out, that you know you're firing on all cylinders. And after the combine, I was pulled into a room and was told, "Hey, we'd like for you to come to St. Louis for this thing called the MLS Super Draft." And I was like, "Oh, that's cool. I think I've seen that on TV." Like, totally not even recognizing the moment, just going from following the yellow brick road from one thing to the next and playing it cool. And I get home and it starts hitting me of, oh, they're for real. This is happening. And I start getting jittery and nervous. I'd never been to a super draft before. And then I'll never forget, it was getting a phone call from Bruce Arena, who was an icon. I mean, just
Right.
especially in the DC area, UVA, that's the Bruce Arena that I knew, and the U.S. national team, the 2002 World Cup. And he called me in the middle of the night, and he had just gotten the job for LA. And he was like, "Do you know who this is?" And I go, "Does a bear poop in the woods?" Of course I know who this is. I look back at it and I'm like, the audacity I had as a punk college kid, talking to Bruce Arena, like, what? And he said, "I've been watching you for 3.5 years, and I think you're a really good player, and I'd like to draft you." And I just was kind of silent. And he said, "I'm going to say this again. How would you like to play with David Beckham?" And that's when it hit me. I said, "Yes, sir." So a couple days later, I get to the super draft in St. Louis, and as fate would have it, doesn't work out to get drafted by the Galaxy. And I got drafted I knew I was going to LA one way or another, and end up at Chivas USA, and Preki drafts me. And there's nothing like when you're sitting there, you have your suit on, and you're waiting. They don't call your name with the first pick. They don't call your name with the second pick. And LA have the third pick, and you start thinking, "Uh-oh, I don't want to be the next Brady Quinn." And then they finally call your name, and just the sense of relief. And I was in a tunnel, really. Just, it was a twilight zone where you're on stage. I don't even know what I said. I think it was like old school, where you drink the water and then you just start saying whatever. And I remember saying something heartfelt about my family and everyone who believed in me.
I'm sure it was good.
Oh, yeah, thank you. And finally, when I got back to my room, I remember sitting down, and I had the old Nokia brick phone. I was a rebel technology-wise. I was like, nah, that BlackBerry stuff at the time, no thanks. I'm going to go old school brick phone. And I remember checking my phone, and that's when it hit me. All these text messages came in, and all these missed voicemails came in, and it was, "Congratulations. Oh my gosh, we're watching you on TV. Oh my gosh, your suit looks awesome." And it just, and I remember,
Which is important as long as the suit game is tight.
yeah, no, I mean, yeah, suit levels 100. I remember that. But I wore a black suit, red tie. I do remember that. But that's when it really hit me, was getting the phone calls from all my friends, guys I grew up with, my college teammates, saying, congratulations, you did it. And I lost it.
That must be just an incredible experience. I mean, that's the kind of thing I think any of us that played sports at, at any kind of a level had that kind of dream at some point. So you went through the awesome draft process and you got to talk to Bruce Arena, which he can be a very tough person to talk to. So it sounds like you got the good end of him, but then you actually have to go and start playing for, I mean, was it, I don't want to say disappointment, but, going from Galaxy to Chivas, it was kind of a difference in those days for sure.
Well, it's once again, the power of obliviousness. I was just so happy to be a professional soccer player. There was a disappointment initially in the draft, but where my mindset changed was, I don't care who drafts me. I just want a chance to live out my childhood dream, to live out the thing that I wanted to do so badly my entire life. And I embraced it head on. I was the most Chivas USA Chivas person there could have been. When I got drafted, I was all in from day one. And I think the real disappointment was seeing how things ended for the club. That's your first club. And you never forget your first club that takes a chance on you, that believes in you. When I looked at this year's draft and I see Danny Pereira getting drafted and just having the luxury of seeing his talent on display, calling games for the ACC network, it brought back memories of just the relief, the elation, the childhood. This is my childhood dream. I can't believe I'm getting a chance to do it. And what a privilege for someone like him to be getting that shot with the hottest team on the market in Austin FC and in one of the coolest cities in the world right now. So it's the stuff really incredible stories are made of, really.
So I think that's a good segue that you set me up for to ask, what do you see has changed most about MLS from when you were drafted to now becoming a broadcaster for the expansion Austin FC?
The biggest thing that I've seen that's changed is how engaged the fans are. I think that's attributed to the access, how much more access fans have to MLS soccer. When I was in the league, Fox Soccer was calling the MLS games of the week. And I just remember it was like Max Bretos and I'm drawing a blank on who did the color analyst stuff. But it was fun. They were creative. It was just so fun. And now it's prime time. Fox, ESPN, there's ABC. You see the size of crowds, seeing soccer-specific stadiums, and there's nothing like it. And when I came in Seattle, that was the benchmark. That was MLS 2.0. And then Atlanta and LAFC, MLS 3.0. And now Austin FC, MLS 4.0. And it's really seeing fans and the stories of clubs who, without fans who were rabid and believed and pled and marched and were banging drums before a ball has even been kicked, that is the new direction of MLS. And that's what really I resonated with when I heard of Austin FC. It was hearing it through the fan base. It was seeing soccer and seeing Austin as a soccer city really in 2019 when I came here to watch the Women's World Cup final. It was seeing this confluence of people from all walks of life, seeing young professionals, seeing grandmas and grandpas, seeing moms and dads of all colors, backgrounds, shapes, and sizes being united by the game that I love and the game that you and I love and the game we all love, the world's game, and seeing it done in Austin to support the women's national team. I was blown away. I was flabbergasted and I mean, flabbergasted, just gobsmacked. Really, that's the right word. I'm using all my onomatopoeia, my buzzwords today.
Keep them coming. We like big syllables here. It makes us sound smart.
Yeah, no, but I was in awe of seeing the power of sport and seeing the power of soccer and how passionate people were in the city of Austin in 2019. And that made a mark on me. It left a mark on me.
So did that experience play a part in you thinking that this was the right opportunity for you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It gave me an insight into what could be with the presence of the game in Austin and what could be with a professional team. I love stories. If you can't tell, I love to talk. I love to tell stories.
And you're in the right profession.
Yeah, and it was really seeing the need, of the unifying need of Austin is the big flag bearer for Austin for the longest time has been University of Texas, and I think the university has done an amazing job, and really connecting with Austin in this new chapter of Austin as a transient city. Austin, I think the old adage of Austin, the old saying was, "Keep Austin weird," and that is very true. That is the soul. That is one of the part of the foundation. And now there's this new chapter that's unfolding for Austin, which is really, for me, it was come one, come all. Doesn't matter who you are, all are welcome. And there was just a sense of, what if there was something, and so many people love sports, but what if there was something in sports that could unite people from all walks of life under this banner for Austin, and really create the seat at the table for all Austinites. And when I saw Austin FC being the first professional sports team, not just soccer, not just MLS team, but sports team in Austin, I just thought, oh, this is going to be big. And then you start seeing Matthew McConaughey and you start seeing the investment that Anthony Precourt's and the ownership group have put into this, Q2, St. David's Performance Center. And then you start seeing, okay, this is going to rock out. This is going to be big.
I think there's a lot of us that thought there was potential in Austin for a long time. And what has just been really fun to see is how it has actually come together, much like you said, in that, there's only a certain number of people in town that actually support the University of Texas. Full disclosure, I'm an Aggie. I went to Texas A&M. The 40 acres I don't care about. But one thing a lot of people don't realize about Austin is, once you get off the drag, basically, you're not just inundated with Longhorn gear or bumper stickers everywhere. I mean, there's, so many businesses and companies that have relocated here in recent years that there's people from all over the place, and everybody for sure was looking for something unifying to support in the team. And it's great that that's what it's going to be for us. Cause I see the same thing you said there. And chances are pretty decent to good that, Austin FC could be our only professional team ever. I mean, who knows how the city will change or demographics will change or whatever in the next 20, 30 years. Maybe someday there's a joint Austin San Antonio NFL team. I don't know, but it based on what we know now, that it's fairly likely.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this slogan, and I come up with. I wake up and I think of so many ideas. That's why I love getting up in the morning and I start writing. I love to write as well. But there was one day, I remember it was right before I found out about getting the job with Austin FC. And I just remember thinking about Austin and Austin FC and what does this club mean? And it hit me, the eureka moment hit me. And it's a team for Austin, by Austin.
Absolutely.
And that's where I drop my mic and outro. But that is what Austin FC is. It is a team for Austin, by Austin. It is you guys as fans. You guys as fans drive this club. And I think that is so unique. And that is where MLS 4.0 and beyond, that is one of the continual changes and things that just warms my heart and excites me about where the league is going and where this team is going, is seeing things like that, is seeing, guys, really learning the story of Austin Anthem, learning the story of how this whole team came together, learning the story of how just rabid Austinites are about soccer and the beautiful game. When I get on air, I think about that stuff. I hold that near and dear to my heart. And whenever we get a chance, especially come June 19th, keep your ears perked. We'll be giving lots of shouts.
Well, I appreciate that y'all recognize. I know, you and Adrian both mentioned Anthem and Los Verdes and La Murga, all the, big supporters groups. And, we definitely appreciate that, the recognition for sure. Cause I think you're right. I mean, there's a strong fan culture in this town that was just waiting to burst forth. And so, and there's numerous expressions of it. And it's honestly fun to be a part of, and it's, appreciate that people like yourself, recognize what's being built there for sure. All right, Michael, I have a few kind of rapid fire-ish questions I want to throw at you, but if you have a good story, don't worry about giving a rapid fire answer. Just want to know, who is the best player or players that you ever competed against?
Oof. In MLS, Thierry Henry, number 1, David Beckham, number 2, David Villa, number 3. Easy.
That's a pretty good trio right there. I mean, anything in particular about any one of them?
A short story about Thierry Henry, twofold. Thierry Henry was my idol growing up. I was a Man United supporter, but man, what Thierry Henry could do from, I'd say 2000 to about 2007, 2008, genius, incredible, just the audacity. And he knew he was that good, and just the swagger. I used to roll my socks up like Henry. I used to have the same Nikes, the knockoff kinds. It was still, we were growing up. Wasn't we're
right. No, I understand.
But it, I just thought, what a player. And when I got a chance to play against him in 2011, I was at Chivas, and they just come to LA, and I was playing right back. And I remember a corner gets played to the left-hand side. And I'm thinking, crap, I forgot where's Henry? I'm supposed to mark him. And I turn, I'm thinking, for sure, this is a goal. He could have smashed that ball in with his eyes closed. He was right at the backstick. He lets the ball go over his shoulder, and then he starts jogging. And if you've watched Thierry Henry in his prime, when he does something, when he chooses not to do something that's easy, you're about to end up on SportsCenter. And so my life starts flashing before my eyes. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, one of my bucket list things while playing was don't ever make SportsCenter not top 10. And I'm thinking, achievement unlocked. I'm about to get humiliated. And he lets the ball bounce, takes a second bounce, and then he does trademark Henry, starts juggling down the end line. And then I'm like, okay, I got it. Everyone's screaming, Lahoud, go pressure him. And I'm looking back like, you go pressure him. I don't right. So I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm going to have to go. So I'm like, okay, look, if he skins me, he skins me. Just do your best. He starts juggling down the end line, the touch line. The end line. And then stops by the corner flag. Looks over his shoulder, looks at me. I go, give him 5 yards. And then he starts juggling down the sideline. And I'm thinking, what is he up to? So he's watching over his shoulder, juggling the whole time, not even looking at me, looking in the box. He pops it up and volleys it all the way to the backstick. It hits Dax McCarty right off his chest. He was shocked. It hit him off his chest and should have scored at the backstick. And when I saw that, I was two things. I just was like, switch. I don't want any of this. No, but really, when I saw that, I was like, you're the real MVP, Thierry. I was in awe. And after that game, I'll never forget, he came up to me and he just gave me words of praise. And he said, you played a really good game. You're going to have a really good career. And that meant the world to me. Those are words every time I see him on TV as a pundit or as a coach, or that will be my one Thierry Henry moment, is that, hey, I believe in your talent. And when it comes from someone who's won everything in this game, it means the world.
So I have two reactions to that. One, it's incredible. And I love it when you hear stories of, big time, big name players doing stuff like that they didn't have to do. Thierry Henry didn't have to take the time to come talk to you like that after a match. So that's very cool. And it gives you a good impression of him as a person, as a human being, for sure. And my second reaction is I love that you worked Dax McCarty into it, because he's long been one of my favorite players in MLS. He's one of those guys that you see just in person, you would never guess as a professional athlete. No offense, Dax, but at the same time, he's super skilled and scrappy, and he's made a great long career in the league.
Oh yeah, I've played against Dax since college. Dax is actually one of his best friends. Is one of my college roommates, Lyle Adams. So they grew up in Orlando.
Random.
So random. So Dax, Graham Susie, and Lyle Adams all played on the same club team together, and we're all the same age. Dax went to residency. He went to Carolina, which is a school that I was looking at going to before committing to Wake. Played against him for 2 years, and for 1 year, I think. I think he went to the league as a sophomore. But just a player who does the little things well. He's consistent, never too high, never too low, and is a deep lying playmaker. Those are the type of players that you want. And speaking of deep lying playmakers, when we talk about Austin FC, the moment when I saw Alex Ring reported and confirmed, getting a player like that, that's when all right, it's for real. We're going to compete from day one. And at the time, from the outside looking in, when I saw that, it was a real deal. Have the utmost respect for Alex Ring, the way he plays, the way he carries himself. In short, he's a hashtag baller.
Yeah, there was, not to totally sidetrack ourselves, but let's sidetrack ourselves. But there was, in the scrimmage the other day against Dynamo, there was one ball he hit, from, fairly deep in Austin FC's side, and just pinpoint, on the upper third, straight onto the feet. I can't remember if it was Rodney or whoever it was, but I mean, just the accuracy of it was so good. And I was like, oh yeah, this is going to work well.
Oh, one thing's for sure. To be competitive in MLS, you have to have a good holding midfielder or center midfield. To start pushing for playoffs and thinking of championships, you have to have an elite holding midfield or center midfielder in there. And what Claudio Reyna and Josh Wolf have done, they got one of the best, if not the best holding midfielder right now in MLS, in Alex Ring. And he's going to be fun to watch. A good Alex Ring this year will be a very good Austin FC.
I think that's a great way to look at it. And that's, one thing a lot of maybe more casual fans don't look at or think about is, your holding or defensive midfielder, and how, important, having that person or that pair, depending on the formation, in front of the defense is to everything that happens. So I think that makes me feel good as a fan, for sure. Knowing that Alex can and should play that role for Austin FC. So based on, and we're totally going to sidetrack here, but so based on what you saw at the scrimmage the other day, was there anything that surprised you, or was there anything that you kind of expected to see based on the pieces and the parts that we have?
That's a very good question. To be honest, no. I think the team is exactly where the team is exactly where the team is. I wish there was a more profound statement than that. I think you see the moments with this team of brilliance, the almost that almost come off, that make you jump out of your seat. You're like, oh man, seeing Cecilio. I think he left. I'm gonna botch his name. I think his name was Thompson. He was a substitute for Houston when he came in.
Okay.
To see his 1v1 ability was really cool. You start to see these moments of brilliance from players that almost come off, and it gives you something to salivate about in the moment, and really something to digest looking forward. I think the fact that the team scored goals is a very positive side. That's what excites me about this team, the ability to score goals. And unfortunately, because it's preseason, giving up goals, I think the manner in which the goals were given up, look, it is preseason. You never get too high, you never get too low. I've seen teams that have crushed teams coming out of preseason. I played for one of them, and we thought we were going to win the CONCACAF Champions League in preseason. And I'll never forget, Jim Curtin was my teammate, the head coach of Philadelphia Union. And to backtrack, I remember my first year at Chivas. Jim Curtin, we lost every game except one. And I was like, oh boy.
Like, yeah, ouch.
Oh boy. And for me, coming from the college season, every result, because it's a shortened season, every result matters. And I'll never forget Jim Curtin. We were at lunch, and he started laughing, and he goes, relax, dude. The season isn't won on game one of preseason. The season is not lost on game one of preseason. It is a long process. We're going to be just fine. Matt, I kid you not, we won our first 9 straight out of the gate. 9 straight. We were top of the league by a country mile. And it was because what we had were MLS veterans who have won things. And that's what gives me excitement about this team. When you see down the spine, Tarbell, recent MLS Cup champion, Matt Beasler, MLS Cup champion, U.S. men's national team experience, World Cup experience, Alex Ring, another captain, leader on the field, alongside Matt Beasler, has definitely had success at NYCFC at every level he's played at, internationally as well. And I mean, those are the things that bode well for successful teams. And it makes me excited about this team in year one, not year 5, year 1 out of the gate. And, we'll see how the team continues to do and improve. But I think the team is on an upward trajectory from what I've seen so far.
So to me, we did have some defensive lapses. The goals we gave up were probably not ones that you would normally be proud of, but they're also, to me, seemed as much as anything the communication type errors. Did you see that? And if so, I mean, is that the kind of thing that you think just will be corrected with more time together?
You nailed it. It's just the principle of time and a matter of time. I think whenever you see goals being given up to individual mistakes, you can correct that. That's one of the easier things to correct. And unfortunately, you never want to have 3 goals given up to individual mistakes, but that comes with understanding, that comes with time. And that's why I love that the club has gone out and done a tournament like La Copita. When you just have preseason games that are preseason games, but they're just one friendly after another, it has a friendly atmosphere. But the fact that they've made the decision to go and get in-state Texas Cup rivals is genius, because now it gives that big game experience for a group that's so brand new, a group that's never experienced it's a first for everyone. It's first for us in the booth. It's preseason for everyone. But now you have your first experience of what does it look like to feel disappointed in a result? Okay, we have a first experience of a group that individual mistakes happen. And how does this group bounce back? And the intangibles, character, resilience, the integrity to the system that's been in place. The fact that Josh and Claudio have gotten consistent players throughout the spine in this league, I think that'll show itself in this very next game against FC Dallas. And ultimately, as the team continues to prepare for the big one, season opener, April 17th in LA against LAFC.
Which I just simply cannot wait for. I mean, that's going to be such a fun experience. But then, the opening home match at Q2 is going to be, fingers crossed we get, and who knows? I mean, none of us know at this point how many people will have, but just fingers crossed it's a good crowd, even if it's not a full stadium, depending on COVID protocols. But that gets me excited. So based on your experience as a player and kind of what you were talking to earlier, I mean, what do you think is a reasonable time frame for how long it's going to take for the team to really gel and really hit their stride on the pitch?
Every team is different, to be honest. I could sit here and say a month and the team rattles off 4 wins in a row. We all hope for that, by the way. So guys, if you're listening, please do that. That'll be fun. But realistically, these next couple of games, and not just La Copita, but usually you start getting a feel for a team after the first month. That's typically, okay, who are we? What style do we have? Especially the fact that we're going on the road and difficult places to play. It does not get any more difficult than LAFC to go Bank of California Stadium. April 17th, the answer to some of those questions will be starting to get answered. But as of right now, I'm thinking short term. I'm thinking we get a microcosm to see what type of team we have based on how does the team respond in this first game against FC Dallas. These are, as a coach, and I'm sure Josh will be looking at this as well. He's an extremely cerebral guy and he's a good coach. Now you start to learn about your team. You know what type of system the team plays: attacking, dynamic, oriented football, free-flowing. And now it's the intangibles that flesh out the rest of the picture of who the team is. And this tournament gives a great precursor to that, I think.
So what do you think is a realistic expectation for the team's performance this season? And I actually thought I was going to ask this question before a little birdie told me that you made a pretty bold prediction recently.
I am personally really excited about this team. I think they have the potential to be a real dark horse in this league. And I'm going to be bold. I'm still waiting for my crystal ball for 2021 to be shipped. But my current crystal ball that I have that I'm shining, I think this team has a potential to be a playoff team in year one. A lot can change. Form comes and goes. How we start the season will definitely tell us. But I like the pieces that the team has. I like the depth of this team. And I believe in this team. And goals change games. And we saw in the last game. I mean, we said it on air, and Adrian and I did. But I think had Danny Pereira scored that goal, the team dominating 5 minutes in the first half, Danny scores that goal, I think that game is done and buried, because Houston, outside of the individual errors that happened, Houston didn't really create much on their own. They counterattacked and
for sure
on our mistakes and limiting those mistakes. Now, if a team is dissecting you like a science project, that's when you have to go to the drawing board. But individual mistakes, those are coachable. Those are redeemable. And I know Josh will have the guys that much sharper with more time together on their hands like they've had in a real MLS like game experience that they've been given this past weekend. And you're really sometimes just getting that first game that everyone's eyes are on you for the first time. There's nerves that go with that, you know? And so once you get that out of the way, it's like, oh, okay, let's continue the work we're doing, guys. Don't panic. The season hasn't kicked off yet. And when the whistle blows for April 17th, the guys will be ready. I've seen enough in training, seeing the guys are bought in to the system. The guys are bought into the philosophy. And this is a team. This is a team-oriented soccer. And I believe in teams more than I believe in individuals, teams that are run by individuals. And this is a team. So that there's a feel-good factor for me in watching this team.
It's always been one of the beautiful things about soccer is, there's no one individual that can make a club great. And I mean, it's the 8 or 9, 10, 11 parts that mesh together are far better than 2 or 3, superstars that, may not be able to work cohesively with anybody else on the pitch.
Absolutely. Well, it's a team sport. That's what, and you have more numbers on the field than say basketball and some of the other sports that you have, and you're dependent on the success of the team and the cohesiveness of the team. So for me, seeing some of the reactions of guys and really the guys coming off the bench, I thought Kakuta was a bright spot. I thought Jared Stroud was a bright spot. He's a guy that's impressed, and I'm just really looking forward for the young guys really to continue to grow under the stewardship of the coaching staff and some of the veterans on the team.
So one thing we kind of just dived right into Austin FC stuff, but I wanted to circle back a little bit and see. So at what point did you know or think you knew that you wanted to make the transition to being a broadcaster from being an athlete?
Well, at the end of last year, I got a phone call from a friend, my friend Corey Williams, and he had challenged me and said, what would it look like for you to spend your offseason differently? Don't touch a ball. Spend your offseason differently. Do everything else that you love. Spend your offseason differently. No one had ever asked me that before, ever. And I was challenged by that. And I thought, oh, okay, let me do that. And it led me on this pretty wild journey from coast to coast. And I got to experience and really do this soul searching of what outside of soccer. I know I love the game, but outside of soccer, what do I enjoy? Who am I without this game? And I mean, I came alive in ways traveling and really talking about the game and doing public speaking and really engaging fans, community service, but all under the banner of soccer. And so, and at the time I also met my girlfriend, Lara. And so I was kind of starting to think of different things, and I made the decision that I was going to give myself some time before making any drastic decision on whether I still wanted to play or not. But I kind of knew that my fire, the thing that got me up every morning, was changing. And it was no longer doing the 2-a-days. It was no longer the little things, putting in the work behind closed doors that no one got to see during my career. But it showed up on the field while I was playing. And so I started just meeting with different people here in San Antonio. And I met a guy by the name of Eric Williamson in downtown San Antonio. And it was just a serendipitous meeting, or so I thought. And
another good word.
Yeah, Eric sat down and he hears my story, and I tell him, I'm kind of trying to figure out outside of soccer what else I want to do. And he goes, I don't know what you're going to end up doing, but if you ever want to do broadcasting, you're it. And I go, come again? What'd you say? And he was like, you should do broadcasting. And I was just like, oh, sure thing. How the heck am I going to do that in the midst of a pandemic? So just from that moment, though, that planted a seed with me. And when I got out of the meeting with him I just became so curious, and I started calling different people. And another serendipitous thing that happened was my now agent that I work with. I walked out of that meeting and I turned my phone on, and I got an email from him just saying, "Hey, your name came across my desk. Would love to talk to you about broadcasting." So this conversation that I just had with a stranger telling me, whatever you're going to do, put that on hold. I think you'd be great for this. And then getting an email from someone who's saying, I would like to talk about working with you, with them not even knowing each other. Those are the type of things you can't make up happening in.
And did you have a tape or anything out at this point? Like, how did they know to contact you?
No tape, really. I'd done a bunch of segments and a bunch of stuff while I was playing. During my playing career, and I look back at it, during my playing career, when I wasn't playing, I was always doing media. I was always doing interviews. I wasn't, when the camera went on, I was never nervous. And the same feeling I have today of the build up to it, the excitement. I still get the same excitement, game day nerves, I call it, game day excitement. And then as soon as you hear the countdown, 3, 2, 1, we're live. It's the same feeling that I would have when I played of as soon as that referee blows the whistle, it's, well, here we go. You're ready. You prepared for this. And I love to talk. So from that, and so I think when you retire, oftentimes, in all seriousness, when you retire, oftentimes as a player, you're thinking about it, there's this loss of identity. And I went through that. Without soccer, who am I? This thing that I've known for a decade plus. If I don't have this, who am I? And the pandemic and quarantine forced me to do a lot of soul searching. And I'm a very introspective person, but add the quarantine with it, you have no choice but to think about things that traveling the world would kind of give you the freedom not to think about. So I just started putting myself out there. I started getting more reels. I just reached out to a lot of different people, just curious about how do you become a broadcaster in the midst of a pandemic? And the one thing that was my torchlight in the darklit room that is transitioning from one career to another was my why. I love this game. Not like Patrice Evra, I love this game, trademark that. I actually love this game. I am obsessed. And soccer is one of the first things I think about. I love reading it. My love of the game is what I always held on to as a player, and as a color analyst and soccer personality now, that is what drives me, is the love of the game and connecting with people who love the game. And so when we talk about fans and the fan base, whether it's the Anthem or Los Verdes, I see that same love in you guys. You guys love Austin FC because you love this game. You guys genuinely love the game of soccer. The city of Austin loves this game. And when it's like finding your tribe of people who love the game as well. So I feel very fortunate to have found that in Austin. I mean, right off the bat, off of transitioning from playing to now being a color analyst, but it's the serendipitous nature of things when you pursue your passion and really you're willing to put the hard work in when no one's looking. It's amazing the things that'll fall into place.
So compare and contrast for me, the most challenging thing about being a professional athlete that most fans don't know about, and then the most challenging thing about being a broadcaster that most viewers wouldn't know about.
That's a great question. Did like my closest friends and family tell you to ask these questions? You're asking great ones.
I appreciate that.
One of the hardest things that most people don't know, I think a lot of people don't realize, and it's being talked about a bit more now, when you're a player or an athlete, is you're a human being first. You have bad days. You're in the business of being held accountable to never have a bad day. To have a bad day it could mean your job. And that's true of most any job, but you're in the business of performance. What have you done for me 90 minutes ago? And you're judged based on that, based on what you do in the midst of 90 minutes or 120 minutes in penalty kicks. And so your brain, you get used to performing in life and at work. And I think the hardest thing is finding that balance of not bringing performance home with you, of when the whistle blows, finding the things that make you come alive and keep you grounded. And family really is become that over the last couple years in particular, but over the last decade. I would say without my family, without my closest friends, especially the friends who've become family, the people who have seen me in the worst of moments, the people who've seen me in the darkest of times, and who've stood by me, that has just kept me so rooted and grounded in the midst of my professional journey as an athlete. In the booth, as a broadcaster and color analyst, really, the thing most people don't realize is the amount of preparation that goes into calling a game. I'm learning that firsthand is when Adrian and I go on and you hear our voices, we've spent weeks preparing. The amount of commitment it takes to make sure you drop everything to go to training, talk to coaches, asking questions, being curious about the team. It's like a Rubik's Cube of looking at the team in different angles. Oh, I saw this. I kind of saw this interaction with this player. Reading people's body language. There's psychology that goes into it. There's a lot of hard work. And I think lastly, it's just like playing, you're a part of a team. So the work that we do is only as good as our chemistry and our teamwork on air. And for this to be my first team and my first opportunity to call a game as a color analyst, I hit the jackpot with Adrian Healy. If you'd have told me when I was playing, when I got to Texas in 2019, said, hey, buddy, enjoy this moment because this is going to be your last season. But wait, it gets better. You're going to go through the desert of life. There's a pandemic that's going to come. But during that time, in the midst of a lot of uncertainty, you're going to get the gift of time. And that's going to give you time to figure out what it is you want to do next. And oh, by the way, you're going to meet the woman you love, which that's always good. And on top of that, you're going to get a chance to work for Austin FC. And oh, by the way, the guy that's going to be your teammate on air is going to be the godfather of broadcasting, Adrian Healy. I would have told you, what are you drinking? Because I need a swig of that. No chance. I couldn't have scripted this, but here we are. And I'm just so grateful for this opportunity. And I'm really grateful to get to know you guys as fans, and really to write the script of this first year story that is Austin FC.
In all honesty, I mean, y'all sounded like y'all been working together for years. I mean, I think, there might've been a couple of slight, early season hiccup of, one of you started to say something and, the other was jumping in right after. But otherwise, I mean, y'all played off of each other really, really well for, your first live broadcast. I mean, I'm sure y'all practiced, but then you also made a couple of insights that I really liked as a fan. And, there was, one time you were mentioning that, you really didn't like if you had a prima donna forward on your team that wouldn't track back and defense, and, just gave that perspective of a player that, someone that hasn't, been on the field and particularly professionally, may not have thought of. And then, there's another time, it was almost like a Tony Romo moment. You like explained, a ball that was going to set up a 2v1 situation, like right as it was happening. And so that's, having that kind of insight is going to be what makes the matches y'all call fun to watch.
Thank you very much. It's a huge compliment, and a big thing that's helped Adrian and I out from the gate is getting to know each other off camera. He's an incredible person. He's who he is on camera. He loves what he does, and that passion. I'm a passionate person about whatever I'm passionate about.
Clearly.
I can't hide that. And so to meet someone else who is who's been doing this for decades, who that fire is as brightly lit as ever, it inspires me. And to have that same person as a teammate and a mentor, man, like I said before, I really have hit the jackpot, and I'm so excited to learn from him. I'm so excited to grow in our friendship together, and I'm just really excited to call our first official game together for Austin FC.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to get to interview Adrian last summer, and he was a super good sport and a lot of fun. And you could just tell he was having fun with the whole experience. And I can imagine that off camera, y'all have a good time for sure. As well as being able to work together.
Absolutely.
So we've covered a ton of ground today, Michael, and I cannot say strongly enough how much I appreciate the time you spent talking to me. Just want to say, is there